You've probably heard the advice so often that it has started to sound like background noise. Go for a walk every day. Walk to stay healthy. Walk to keep your heart strong. Walk to clear your mind. And it's true, walking has earned its reputation. It has carried humans across landscapes for thousands of years, shaping our bodies, our bones, and even our way of thinking. But sometimes the most familiar advice hides a deeper question beneath it. What if walking, as valuable as it is, isn't always the most appropriate or complete answer for every body at every stage of life? What if there is a simpler movement, one that asks less of our joints, less of our confidence, and yet gives more back to our muscles, our balance, and even our sense of control over our own bodies? As we age, the relationship we have with movement changes. The body no longer responds automatically. Movements that once required no thought begin to demand attention. A step onto a curb, a turn too quickly, a moment of distraction, these small things can suddenly feel significant. And this isn't a failure of willpower or motivation. It's biology. Muscles lose mass if they are not regularly challenged. Nerves conduct signals a little more slowly. The inner ear, which helps us understand where we are in space, becomes less precise. The brain, always economical, begins to rely more on habit and less on exploration. Thus, none of this is dramatic on its own, but together, these changes can quietly shrink a person's world. That shrinking often begins with walking. A walk that once felt refreshing begins to feel uncertain. The knees ache after a few blocks. The hips feel stiff when starting out. The ground feels less predictable. And so the walks become shorter, less frequent, or disappear altogether, not because the desire to be active is gone, but because the body has sent a message that it no longer feels entirely safe. This is where a simple idea, almost deceptively simple, enters the conversation. The act of marching in place, lifting one knee, then the other, standing still while the body practices the very elements that walking demands: a strength, balance, coordination, rhythm, and attention. It doesn't require a sidewalk or good weather. It doesn't demand endurance before it offers benefits. It asks only that you stand or sit and participate consciously in the act of moving your own body through space. From a biological perspective, marching is fascinating. When you lift a knee, you are not just moving a leg. You are engaging deep muscles in the hip that are essential for stabilizing the pelvis. You are asking the thigh muscles to contract and relax in a controlled manner. You are signaling the brain to coordinate movement across both sides of the body. Each lift becomes a small conversation between the nervous system and the muscles, reinforcing pathways that support balance and confidence. Walking, especially at a comfortable pace, often becomes automatic. The brain relies on stored patterns. This efficiency is useful, but it also means that some systems are no longer being challenged. Marching, by contrast, interrupts autopilot. Each lift requires intention. Each step asks the brain to check in. Where is my weight? How steady am I? How high can I lift safely today? This conscious engagement is not a flaw, it is a feature. It keeps the nervous system alert and adaptable. There is also something quietly powerful about doing this movement at home. The living room, the kitchen, the space near a chair or a wall. These are environments where the body feels safe. Safety matters more than we often admit. When the brain senses threat of falling, of pain, of embarrassment, it limits movement. When the brain senses safety, it allows exploration. Marching in place creates a controlled environment where movement can be practiced without fear. That alone can change how the body responds. Science has spent years observing what happens when older adults engage in movements that challenge balance without overwhelming the joints. Again and again, the same pattern emerges. When muscles around the hips and thighs are strengthened, stability improves. When balance is practiced deliberately, the brain becomes better at predicting and correcting small errors. When movements are repeated consistently, confidence grows alongside strength. These changes are not abstract. They show up in daily life: standing up more easily, turning without hesitation, feeling grounded rather than cautious. There is a common misconception that exercise must be exhausting to be effective, that if the heart is not racing and the muscles are not burning, nothing meaningful is happening. But the body does not work in absolutes. It responds to signals. A gentle but consistent signal, repeated over time, can reshape tissue, retrain nerves, and restore trust between the mind and the body. Marching sends exactly this kind of signal. Consider the act of lifting a knee. It mirrors one of the most important phases of walking, the moment when one foot leaves the ground and the entire body is supported by the other leg. This is the moment when balance is most vulnerable. Many falls happen not because of weakness alone, but because the body hesitates during this transition. Marching isolates this phase and allows it to be practiced slowly, deliberately, and safely. Over time, the body learns that it can manage this moment again. The heart, too, responds. Even gentle marching increases circulation. Blood flow improves. Oxygen delivery becomes more efficient. But unlike brisk walking, which may demand sustained effort, marching allows intensity to be adjusted instantly. A slower pace, a smaller lift, a pause when needed. This adaptability makes it accessible to a wider range of bodies, including those recovering from injury or managing chronic conditions. There is also the brain to consider. Movement is not just mechanical, it is cognitive. Coordinating alternating limbs, maintaining posture, regulating breathing. These are tasks that engage attention and memory. When these systems are stimulated together, they support one another. This is why activities that combine movement and coordination are often associated with better cognitive resilience. Marching, simple as it appears, is a quiet rehearsal for complex neural tasks. Stories often reveal what data alone cannot. Imagine someone who has spent a lifetime trusting their legs, trusting the ground beneath them, trusting their ability to move without thinking. Then imagine how destabilizing it feels when that trust is broken by a slip, a fall, or even a near miss. The body remembers these moments. Muscles tighten, movements become cautious, confidence erodes. In such cases, the problem is not just physical weakness. It is a disrupted relationship between the person and their own body. When movement is reintroduced gently, without pressure, something shifts. The body begins to respond not with fear, but with curiosity. Can I lift my knee today? Can I hold myself steady for a few seconds? These small questions, answered successfully, rebuild trust. And trust, once restored, opens the door to further movement, whether that is walking outside again or simply moving more freely at home. The beauty of marching lies in its scalability. For someone just beginning, a few seconds may be enough. Lift, lower, breathe, rest, repeat. There is no failure in this. The body adapts at its own pace. As strength and confidence grow, time extends naturally. 30 seconds becomes a minute becomes several. The movement evolves not because it must, but because the body is ready. For those who cannot stand safely, seated marching offers the same principles in a different form. Sitting upright, lifting one knee at a time, engaging the core to remain tall. Even here, the hips are activated, the thighs work, the brain coordinates. This reminds us that movement is not defined by position, but by intention. The body responds to what it is asked to do, not where it happens. Consistency matters more than intensity. 5 minutes a day, practiced regularly, can create meaningful change. Muscles respond to repetition. Nerves respond to familiarity. Balance improves when it is invited often, not when it is demanded occasionally. This is one of the quiet truths of physiology. Small, repeated efforts shape the body more reliably than rare, heroic ones. There is also a philosophical dimension to this practice. Marching in place is an act of presence. You are not going anywhere, yet you are fully engaged. It is movement without destination, effort without urgency. In a culture that often equates progress with speed and distance, this kind of movement invites a different perspective. It suggests that improvement does not always require forward motion. Sometimes stability is the goal. Sometimes learning to stand confidently where you are is enough. The human body is remarkably adaptive, even later in life. Muscles can strengthen. Nerves can refine their signals. Balance can improve. These changes do not require youth, they require stimulation. The idea that aging inevitably leads to decline ignores the body's capacity to respond to care and attention. Movement is one of the most direct ways to offer that care. When done thoughtfully, marching becomes more than an exercise. It becomes a daily check-in. How do my legs feel today? How steady is my breath? How present is my mind? These questions, asked through movement rather than words, cultivate awareness. Awareness, in turn, supports better choices. Perhaps today is a slower day. Perhaps tomorrow will feel lighter. Both are acceptable. What matters is participation. The willingness to move, even gently, even briefly, sends a message to the body that it is still valued, still capable, still worth investing in. Over time, this message accumulates. It reshapes not just muscles and joints. I am someone who moves. I am someone who cares for my body. I am someone who adapts. In the end, the simplicity of marching is its strength. It strips movement down to its essentials and invites us to rebuild from there. One lift, one moment of balance, repeated patiently with kindness. This is how resilience is practiced, not only in the body, but in the mind. And step by step, even without going anywhere, the body remembers how to move forward again.